Hello everybody, it's Becky here and welcome to Tales from Westwick, and this episode is going to be all about the mending. I have loads of mending to show you. I've been doing lots of mending. I have a mending list with about 20 items on it yet to be tackled. But I thought, before I show you my mending and I talk about what I've been doing, I wanted to have a chat with you about why I mend and why it's important to me and how it fits in with my values and the life that Josh and I are kind of consciously trying to build. Because that is what we're doing. All of this keeping chickens, composting, all of this is really about trying to live in a way that's in accordance with some values that we have talked about, and to live in a way which hopefully eventually we can get to a point where we're living in a way which the planet can support for everybody. I think that it's important to acknowledge that we don't all in this world have the same standard of living, and the only reason that we in the West can enjoy some of the standards of living we do is because other people are not consuming resources at the same rate. And that's what this conversation is about. It's about consumption. So the reason I do so much mending is because I try to live by this philosophy of love what I have. And that means that things I own, I want to enjoy them, I want to cherish them, and I want to mend them. And if and when they come to the end of their useful life, I want to dispose of them in a way which is gentle and kind to the planet and to the people who will come after me. And this leads into consumption in a number of ways. So the first and most obvious thing is that obviously we all need to consume. You can't spend your entire life from birth to death wearing just one t-shirt and one pair of jeans and one pair of shoes. So there's got to be a sort of a base level of consumption for everybody. But when I consume, in as far as possible, and I'm not perfect, but as far as I can, I try to buy things which have a supply chain that I agree with ethically. I try to buy things that are built to last. So I would rather do without and save up for as long as I can to buy something that will last. And I'm trying to buy things that you can mend. Because actually an awful lot of the products that we are sold these days, you can't mend them. Or at least you can't mend them very easily. You have to take them to a specialist shop, or they're completely redundant. A little while ago I had a problem with my iPhone. So I sent it back to the manufacturers to fix, because I couldn't fix it myself, only to be told that they'd sent me a brand new version of my iPhone because they weren't even going to bother fixing it. And that just seemed to me kind of incredible, and it's made me think that I'm going to hold on to that iPhone now for as long as I possibly can, because even Apple seems to be treating them as sort of slightly disposable products. And I do want to caveat that by saying that I understand completely that not everybody has the money to shop as ethically as they want to, and if buying clothes from Primark is all that you can afford, if buying clothes from Tesco's is all that you can afford, and you're doing your best, then you know what, power to you, and I'm not going to judge you for that. But me, I can do better. I can do better in my life, and that's what I'm aiming for. So that's the first thing. I love what I've got and I mend it. And I just wanted to kind of go back to that point around buying things that can be mended. We have been making a lot of decisions recently. So we want Rafi and Athena to have, wooden toys instead of plastic toys, because I have discovered over the last couple of years that it is much easier to mend a wooden toy than it is to mend a plastic toy. Much easier. Wooden toys last longer and you can fix them. You can sandpaper off felt tip stains. You can buy wood glue to put them back together. You can't do that with plastic toys. So I think there's all sorts of things in there around buying toys and clothes that are built to last. And you know what? They are more expensive. But then you only have to buy them once. So that's the first thing. This is going to lead me into discussing my uneasy relationship with capitalism, and I have a very uneasy relationship with capitalism. Gosh, this is going to get very deep and philosophical, isn't it? But here we go. So it seems to me that whilst capitalism has done some good things, it has also done some very bad things, and we are now in a state in our society where capitalism has baked into our social culture, some ideas that are really toxic, that we just can't get away from. And because now we have these toxic ideas being reinforced both by capitalism, so economics on one hand, and now our culture on the other, it's pretty much impossible to put a new system in place which might be better for us all. So when I say I think that there are some toxic things about capitalism, what am I talking about? Well, I have a list. I have a list of 4 things. So as far as I can see and have read and have experienced, the capitalist economic systems in the West depend on us buying new stuff. In fact, they depend on it so heavily that, governments will put out economic stimulus packages where they give every citizen £200 or $200. I remember this happening in the George W. Bush years. I think everybody in the US got $200 to just spend on stuff to keep the economy ticking over, to get them out of recession. So when you have a system which requires people to keep consuming and to consume at very high rates for its own survival, this is going to lead on to some other pretty toxic ideas. So firstly, there's going to be a throwaway culture, because you don't want somebody to buy themselves one computer which will last them for 20, 30 years, because that's not going to give you a fast enough turnover to keep profits going up and to keep the capitalist system going. So you're building in obsolescence and you're designing things which will either break or are so cheap they can be thrown away and people can easily buy new ones. And I don't think that's a really good mindset for us to be in as people. And it goes back to what I was saying about love what you have, value what you have, because if you value something, you don't wear it twice and throw it away. If you value something, you try and get it mended. You don't just buy a new one. So it doesn't stop the consumer cycle, but it puts some brakes on and it tries to get us to a place where it's a bit more manageable. So that's the first thing. System requires us to consume. This leads to us throwing away and just wasting resources. Next, in order to meet these levels of consumption, we can't do it without exploiting either people, animals, or the environmental resources we have, or all 3. And you know what? I'm kind of not cool with a system which is dependent on exploitation. I'm just not. Then we have this, in order to keep people consuming again and again, you have to be convincing them that there's something wrong with their lives and that they can fix it by buying things. So capitalism and consumer culture depends on people feeling unhappy with what they've got. And when you start to think about those things, the idea of saying, I value what I have, I love what I have, and I'm going to mend it and take care of it and look after it, and it makes me happy, that suddenly becomes quite a radical thing to say. Because you're faced with this culture and this system which is telling you, you can't possibly be happy with what you've got because that means you won't buy more things. And when we do sell you things, we're going to convince you need an upgrade, or we're going to make it so cheap you don't value it, or we're going to make it obsolete in 2 years, or it's going to break down really quickly and that's just part of the product and you just have to live with it. And all of this leads us to a system where we are racing to deplete resources. Of course, we're not deliberately and consciously racing to deplete resources. It's a sort of a byproduct of this system that we've built around consumerism. And in the race to deplete resources, we have created climate change and a whole lot of other things which are going very badly wrong and making this planet a less nice place to live. And yeah, I know this sounds pretty green and hippie, but I'm here because I care about this sort of thing, and I'm here because I value these sorts of things, and I am not okay with a system which is a race to deplete as many resources as possible, because at some point they're going to run out. And I don't think we've got a plan for that. I just don't. I was watching a video recently by Happen Films. And it was it was quite an uplifting video actually about solutions. What are we going to do facing climate change? What are the solutions going to be? And one of the speakers on that video, who I'm really sorry but I've forgotten who it was, She said the problem is that we shouldn't even be trying to live sustainably. We should be like trying to live regeneratively. And that really just brought me up short, because I'd been working to this idea of sustainable living and I thought that it was cool and important, but here was somebody saying, actually, that's not enough. We need to be regenerating these resources. And I felt that that was such an important and interesting observation, and so counter to our current consumer system. So counter. Because we currently have a system where we aren't even regenerating, half of the resources we're pulling out of the planet, let alone 100%, let alone getting it in balance. And so, although mending sounds like it's a really small thing to do, and it is a small thing to do, but for me it's a mindset shift around saying, I'm going to be happy with what I've got, I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to save up and buy things that last when I need them. And when I want them, I don't wear a hair shirt all the time, I buy knitting yarn because it's pretty, and I try and buy sustainable, ethically produced knitting yarn where it's possible. So yeah, anyway, the reason that I did this little intro is because I was sitting in the car the other day ranting to Josh about my thoughts about capitalism and the environment and consumer culture, and he said, why aren't you making videos about that? So I did, and there we are. So on to some of the mending that I have been doing. So I had 20 things on my mending list the other day. I powered through about 5 or 6 yesterday, and the first thing I did was this is a toy that a really good friend of mine knitted for my daughter Athena when she was born, and one of the wings came off, so I sewed it back on. I secured both of them, and now Athena's owl is good to go. Still on the subject of Athena, dribble bibs. You hit a point about 4 months old where dribble bibs become the most important thing in your life. And we had these dribble bibs for Raffi, and I dyed them all interesting colours because I had a bit more time back then. But they all have Velcro on, and the thing I discovered is when you get onto child number 2 is the Velcro doesn't really stick very well anymore, so I've been putting pop studs on all of these dribble bibs to get some more use out of them. I've done about 5 so far. I think I've got 2 more to go. And then trousers. Oh my goodness, Raffi has been running through the knees on his trousers like there is no tomorrow, and I feel like every time I do a video I say to you guys, and Raffi's put another hole in his trousers. Well, he did. 3 to be precise. So we have these ones. Ooh. Mended with fleece. I'm now going to call these the chocolate lime trousers. We have this. One, I think, really good tip is if you have any cool leftover fabric with patterns on it, cut out squares and use them as patches. So it just looks really, really pretty, and it's a good way of using up quite kind of tiny bits of fabric. And this last one, is an invisible mend, so I hope you can't see it. I also sewed the hem up on Josh's jumper and a couple of other kind of tiny bits, but basically I'm putting off patching 3 pairs of trousers that belong to Josh and I, because they're going to be much, much bigger jobs. Also did some charity shopping, so I am a huge advocate of shopping in charity shops. Firstly, it's giving money to charity, but secondly, you're using resources that somebody else doesn't want anymore, so you're not having to create new things. I think that charity shopping can get a little bit out of control if you're not careful, and you shouldn't kind of just switch all your consumer needs and tendencies and love of shopping over to charity shops, because then you're still filling up your house with stuff you don't need. But I got a set of handkerchiefs. Handkerchiefs are so important when you have small children. Oh my goodness. They're just like drip factories, children. They're just waterfalls out of their mouths or their noses all the time. So I've just taken to carrying handkerchiefs everywhere, and we did not have enough. So I managed to pick up another 3 handkerchiefs there. Brilliant. And then I found this. Am I allowed to say that I think it's hideous? I do think it's hideous. I bought it because it's cotton, and you know my thoughts on cotton, that it's got a really high environmental impact, but I love cotton dishcloths. They're a really good reusable way of doing your washing up, washing surfaces down. So when I saw this, and I had a good feel of it, and I went, that's cotton, I thought, I'll get it, I'll pull it apart, and I'll make some dishcloths out of it. Fantastic, we'll get lots of use out of that. And then as soon as Rafi saw this hideous orange jumper, the first thing he said was, I want that. So I've taken it away to see if he notices, and hopefully he won't, and I'll be able to use it for the purpose for which I bought it originally. Oh, and I got a pair of jeans for Rafi in the next size up, so I'm liking denim more and more. I have this idea that denim will run through at the knees nowhere near as fast as some of these other fabrics that I'm constantly mending. Denim seems to be that little bit tougher, and boy do we need it. So that's basically it. A long rant about consumer culture. I'm very sorry about that. And then a tiny little bit of mending at the end, and my kind of odes to charity shops and how much I love them. If you have any thoughts, then I would totally love to hear them. Give me a comment below, and see you next week. Goodbye.